Hey, what's up guys? So today we're going to be talking about The Amazing Spider-Man number 24. I will outright be talking about the comic book itself, so if you haven't read it and you want to know what happens before you hear me talk about it, then you probably want to do so right now. Otherwise, if you just want to follow along the story through my videos, then you're also welcome to do so. But without further ado, let's begin. So we begin the story 1 year ago at the Baxter building. We're still continuing the events from the previous issue, but it seems like their urgency of trying to find Spider-Man just completely went away, because we're late at night at the Baxter building and Ben Grimm is just strolling around getting a sandwich when he hears a noise coming from somewhere, and Ben just assumes that it's Mr. Fantastic working in the lab. But actually, Reed Richards and Sue Storm are just now walking in from their trip. Immediately, Ben hides the sandwich behind him and then tosses it into a random room that's just right next to him. But he's also wondering, if they just got back just now, then what was that noise in the lab from earlier when he was eating that sandwich? He runs to the lab only to find out that it's Spider-Man who's stealing their technology. Ben catches him in the act and says, "What the crud?" And Spider-Man just says, "I was just looking at it." Ben tries stopping Spider-Man in the act, but of course, he jumps out of the way, getting away with stealing the little mini fusion reactor and jumping out of the lab. Mr. Fantastic follows Peter by stretching and questions, "Are you stealing that? Why didn't you just ask?" And Spider-Man responds with, "Can I have this mini fusion reactor?" And of course, Mr. Fantastic responds with, "It's dangerous. I can't just..." Spider-Man cuts him off and thwups his face, blinding him. Reed desperately tries having the computer capture Spider-Man, but because in the previous issue, they ended up changing it so that Spider-Man is seen as a friendly. So of course the computer continuously refuses trying to capture Spider-Man. They do inevitably end up sealing Spider-Man before he manages to get to a window, and they corner him. The Torch approaches him and says, "I don't know what you think you're doing, but I've had enough of it." And he sort of explodes in a fiery rage, popping a hole through the wall of the building. And then they question Johnny, "What are you doing?" And Johnny says, "Just giving him a little scare, I think." He pokes his head through to check to see if Spider-Man's there, and he questions, Spidey? He escaped, right? He wonders if he literally just incinerated Spider-Man. But no, of course, Spider-Man manages to get away in the ruckus with the technology that he stole. Johnny does make chase after Spider-Man trying to capture him, but inevitably, Spider-Man does end up getting loose from him, and he changes into his civilian clothes. That way he's able to take the subway and easily avoid the Human Torch, because it's explained that he can't power down. He's limited into the areas that he can actually go into. So this allows Peter to just calmly take the subway, and he's just thinking, Johnny can cover more ground than me, but losing him wasn't hard. He can't turn down his flame, he has to be careful about where he goes. I don't. I can go anywhere, even New Jersey. It's not the only place Norman could find a suitable workplace. Away from New York City, away from prying eyes. We don't want to attract attention. Peter walks into this docked warehouse in New Jersey, and we get this mysterious figure silhouette following Peter. As Peter walks into the warehouse, a voice out of frame says, "Did you get it?" And he says, "I told you I would, didn't I?" And the voice out of frame is revealed to be, of course, Norman Osborn. And he says, "Good timing. I'm finished." And it's revealed they got this little spider setup that will transport Spider-Man back to that other dimension where he came from, to save Mary Jane, of course. At this point, it does seem like quite a bit of time has passed. So, mind you, that other dimension, time passes way faster. So, there's gonna be some changes when we get there. But anyways, Norman says, "The quantum cables you borrowed from Stark needed aggressive modification to fit the plank drive Felicia procured from Moon Girl. But I can start test runs now, and hopefully in a couple days." Peter cuts him off because he's in a rush and says, "We do it now." So they hook him up to the teleportation suit, and Norman says, "We'll need all the power in the fusion reactor to send you back. The spider device slipped you through space and time, but the door slammed shut right behind you. We're going to reopen it with brute force." Norman attaches the little goober onto the device that has Peter attached to it and continues saying, "That saves your express ticket for the journey home. I've expanded the effective range for multiple travelers, but its charge is only good for one trip, so look after it. I want you to be cognizant of the risks, Peter. Neither of us have slept in days. I haven't checked my work. But Peter's rushful and says, I understand, let's go. And Osborn says, alright, thank you for trusting me with this. But Peter has to say, I don't. But MJ is out there alone. I don't have a choice. Osborn sort of understands this and says, prepare for ignition. The silhouette that followed Peter is still standing outside and starts noticing all the ruckus that's happening inside and all the lights going off and wonders, what are these guys up to? As the machine turns on, Peter starts screaming, and Norman's saying, it's shaking itself apart, I have to shut it down. But Peter says, no, hit it, Norman, now. So of course, Norman hits the red button, and it starts teleporting Spider-Man away. As this happens, we get to see the silhouette, its mysterious figure outside, standing and seeing this happen, and it creates an explosion in a hole on the wall, and the mysterious figure says, oh my god. Norman's just watching this happen and just says, Peter. The mysterious silhouetted character is revealed to be Kamala Khan, or better yet, Miss Marvel, and she looks through the hole that just got created and questions, is that Norman Osborn? And yells and questions at him, what do you think you're doing in my city? And then we get Peter just bending through space and time, probably in some agony, I assume, and he's headed back to that dimension where MJ is at. And during this process, a random set of eyes catches onto him and says, there you are. Spider-Man recognizes the voice and questions, Raven? And the voice continues, you traveled to your death. I slaughter you when you arrive. And Spider-Man yells in refusal, and the voice of Raven continues and says, I agree. My ceremony was flawed, performed in the wrong order. I've gained the mind of a god, but not the body. To become the god of death, it is I who must and gets cut off. We cut to the other dimension where we last left MJ, and she's being approached by Raven. It looks like Raven finally caught up to MJ and Paul, who look very defeated at this point. Raven standing over them and says, we'll plunge the blade of decay into your heart, and I will become Wayab. This very moment, a portal opens up behind Raven, and Spider-Man comes through. Peter quickly takes the teleportation equipment off, and immediately tackles Raven. Raven does say, you've been gone too long, Sunblood. You can no longer stand against me. You can only spend your last moments witnessing the death of your... What is this? A still small voice. Yes, I understand. Sounds like at this very moment, Raven hears a voice in his head that gives him instructions to impel himself at this very moment. And so he does, and falls over in front of Spider-Man. Paul is relieved at this moment and says, works for me. There's a door behind MJ and Paul, and it looks like there's a couple of fists being held up through the little see-through window. Paul turns around and says, the kids. MJ looks at Peter and she's worried about him and says, Peter, is that really you? Of course, Peter's in shock that he's seeing MJ and immediately hugs her. Peter starts asking her if she's okay, but MJ looks a little too distant. Peter's wondering what's going on, and MJ says, you've been gone a long time. A lot has changed. Paul reveals a couple of kids and says, the kids are scared. Peter looks at them and asks, what? Who are they? MJ turns over at Peter and says, they're my family. And to be continued. That's how that story ends. So what do I think about the comic itself? Well, holy shit. What a drop. Well, right off the bat, like I was saying at the very beginning, what's the deal with people just dropping their guard on trying to capture Spider-Man? Or trying to figure out at least what's going on with him? Seems like everyone just forgot about that part. Reed sort of shows up and he's kind of just clueless over the situation. I mean, he doesn't really say much. Just like Sue, like she barely said anything. What did she say? All she said was, damn it, computer, when it declined to capture Spider-Man. Oh, and she also said, careful, when the thing combusted into flames when the torch flew by him. But at least Spider-Man managed to get what he wanted from the Fantastic Four's Baxter building. And I like that little mystery with who's the mysterious silhouette figure. I like the fact that it was revealed in the same issue. That mystery didn't last long. It was just Miss Marvel. But the next mystery remains, what is she up to? What was her deal? Why was she following Peter? Who knows? We'll find out, I guess. And then now I think we're dealing with like two different Ravens. So when he was teleporting to that other dimension, Peter was getting spoken to by Raven's voice, saying how the ceremony was flawed and he just managed to gain like the mind of a god, but not the body. So he's just chilling in between dimensions or something. And I'm just gonna go out on a crazy guess, assuming that that's the same voice that Raven in the universe heard before he impaled himself. In that scenario, before Spider-Man actually teleported in, that was kind of interesting. It looked like Spider-Man just barely showed up on time before Paul and MJ just got obliterated by Raven. And then the big reveal, MJ's kids. Looks like Peter ended up taking too long trying to save her, and time just flew by because MJ ended up getting freaky, ended up having kids. Like, I'm assuming MJ is probably maybe 9 years older, 10 years older. Peter was gone quite a long time, but we'll see what happens next. I'd say this issue was definitely below average, definitely served its purpose to just answer the one question on where did these kids come from, you know, MJ's kids, and it definitely answered that question. But besides that, it was very below average. The Fantastic Four appearance in this comic, pretty lackluster. Served more of a joke instead of a actual storytelling aspect. I mean, I guess he also needed that piece of technology, but it was more of a joke. Nothing much with this issue besides that, really. But anyways, I appreciate you guys for listening to me talk about this comic book, and if you want to listen to more comics that are coming out in the future, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.